Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
The Daily Compliance News for April 1st, 2021, the Voltswagen edition. And we begin with that story from NPR, as Volkswagen will not change its name to Voltswagen after all, saying it was just a joke. April Fool's Day came a little bit early this year, although we were reporting this story on April Fool's Day. Volkswagen of America will not be rebranding to Voltswagen of America, despite a statement released earlier this week that many, from analysts and investors to media outlets, took at its word. Volkswagen of America will not be changing its name. The renaming was designated to be an announcement in the spirit of April Fool's Day, highlighting the launch of an all-electric SUV and signaling the company's commitment to bring electric mobility to all. The rebranding effort was posted to the VW site. In a statement, Volkswagen USA claimed it was changing its name to reflect the company's ambition. So even if you're filing or releasing a press release before April Fool's Day, I guess the American public and indeed the worldwide consuming public needs to be aware that it might be one big April Fool's joke. In the Washington Post, it reports that Georgia sports teams and major companies such as Coca-Cola and Delta apparently have woken up and now condemn the state's new voter suppression law. Voting rights advocate pushed corporate responses before the law was signed, and now the statements say they've come too late to be backed up by action. But Delta CEO Ed Bastain condemned the legislation as unacceptable and contrary to the company's values. My suggestion would be that Coca-Cola CEO, in addition to saying the legislation was wrong and a step backward, announced that they would be passing out free soda products in line to anyone who has to stand in line and vote. My question is, does this mean you can't pass out water to marathoners? That would certainly be something that would be a very different experience for those running marathons in Georgia. So Jim Crow returns to the South, and now Coca-Cola and Delta finally have awoken. Our next story also features Delta, as it says it will resume booking middle seats for the first time in a year. Other airlines have blocked middle seats in the pandemic, but Delta held out the longest and is the last of the big 4 to get rid of the policy. Delta started blocking middle seats in April 2020 to give passengers peace of mind, but as air travel begins to start to recover, the company needs the revenue, and they believe that people are be willing to sit in those middle seats. So get ready to get back into the middle of things. And finally, from the Wall Street Journal, the NCAA was in front of the Supreme Court yesterday trying to justify its position of not paying student athletes, claiming that they would lose their amateur character. They were basically skewered by the U.S. Supreme Court. Turns out there are several justices who are big sports fans, and they made mincemeat of the NCAA's argument. They did seem to have a note of concern about how far this might go. Obviously, the big powers could then pay as much as they wanted, so they seem to recognize some need for some type of regulatory aspect, but they concluded that that's really not their job to engage in such regulatory oversight. That's congressional, or if the NCAA could ever do anything right, perhaps their job. But look for a big change in college sports. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.